I'm Annie.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Lactation Business Coaching with Annie and Leah, where we talk about the smart way to create a compassionate and professional private practice.
Let's dive in.
Well, hey there, Leah.
Hey there, Annie. How are you?
I'm kind of amazed that we are celebrating our 5-year anniversary, Leah, with this episode.
Which is insane because I just was thinking like, wait, 5 years ago feels like a lifetime ago, right? Like we were in just such different places, and then to see our little baby here, how it has grown and developed and evolved. It's just so fun to think that we've done this for 5 years, but also just like kind of mind-boggling, right?
It's totally mind-boggling because it was just such kind of a random idea, number one. And we had no idea when we started everything that was going to unfold. And it's just like when we think about like ourselves when we started this, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and like not knowing that a global pandemic was headed our way.
Right.
We were so full of optimism, eyes full of stars.
Totally. I know. It's just so funny. It's one of those moments in life when we made this decision that just clicked together without literally a thought, which doesn't happen very often, but it always is a sign to me that like it's meant to be. Like we were meant to be here. Just like there was no question or hesitation or anything. It just like, boom, we're doing this. And it's just so fun to reflect on, you know, how that came together. And then just, you know, I'm so grateful that I didn't question the decision when you sent me an email and it was so like, hey, we met at a conference. Do you want to start a podcast? And I literally like wrote back in 2 seconds, like with zero. I'm like, heck yeah, I want to start a podcast. Let's do this. With barely even knowing each other than this interaction we had at the podcast, which
it might not even have been an email. It also might have been on like Facebook Messenger. Like I like slid into your DMs.
Yeah.
You ever wanted to have a podcast? You were like, I've been waiting my whole life for somebody to ask me that.
Let's do it. And we were just like all in. It was so funny, but it just is such a reflection on life things like that when things are like meant to be and right and it just falls in your lap. And when you think about it in that moment, like nothing bubbles up of like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. Feels uncomfortable, but maybe I want to. I was just like, none of that. I was just like,
none of it.
Let's do this. Let's just go for it. And we did it, which was crazy.
And we barely knew each other. I had seen you speak at a conference and you were talking about in-person marketing and you had made this like amazing video where you're like pretending to go to the doctor's office and then the receptionist like takes your cards and throws them in a drawer and just slams it shut. And you're like, that's what happens. But you have to like go in and like schedule an appointment with them. And I was like, that's amazing. But it was mostly like, it was like a great talk, but it was the fact that you made that video, put it over the top.
My one acting debut. That's one talk where I like channeled all my creative juices into that talk of like, I just wanted to knock it out of the park. And look what it got me. It got me
I know
a podcast.
I found out later that you like have a performing background. Like you've like done stuff. It was so funny because I didn't know that we were like had become IBCLCs at the same time. All I knew was that like I liked your energy and I really liked that video. And I had done a podcast a long time ago, like in the mid 2000s, when I worked for a corporate company, a digital marketing agency, and it was called zoom-in.com. And I had like theme music and I went and interviewed photographers for some of it. And I interviewed like people that did like post-production stuff. Like it was very dry. It was a very like corporate podcast, but I loved it. I loved having a podcast. I loved everything about it. I was like, always wanted to have another podcast. And so I was like, I'm going to have a podcast, but there's no part of me that wants to just be a solo podcaster. That sounds boring. And that sounds like that made me uncomfortable. I'm like, who am I to like go out there? And so I'm like, I have to find somebody that I want to talk to about this, about all this stuff, about lactation stuff. So you wrote back right away. And then you had all these like great questions. I was kind of like, okay, when can you record? And you're like, okay, we need a name. We need a focus. What is our podcast about? What's our mission statement? I'm like, what do you mean? It's our podcast.
I know. It's like so fun that like our personalities really complement each other so much that we didn't know that, right? And then it just kind of like so unfolded of like, I don't know, the stars aligned and put us here together like in just such a perfect way, right? Because I feel like we have so many things alike, but so many things that are so different that help us see like so many different perspectives and angles from running the whole podcast situation. But then also I've just gained so much from doing the podcast because I get to hear your perspective on things, which I just like opens my eyes to like all these different ideas and things. I hope I contribute some.
Well, you're like the heart part of it, because you're always like thinking about like taking it to like deeper places and like the more like what's your mindset around this, or like how does this really kind of affect your life, where like if I'm left on my own, I'm basically a robot, like turn a key and I'll spit out some actual information that isn't probably that interesting to listen to. But so it's nice to be able to have that modulated by somebody who has just more energy generally than me.
Fate that we came together, and it's such a perfect match. We had a love connection.
It was like, totally. I would do it. I think you would agree with me. Like I would keep doing this even if like hardly anybody was listening, just 'cause it's fun. It's really fun. And we always, after we're done recording, we're like, I just really needed to talk about that stuff.
I know.
But so like the icing on the cake is that people do listen, and we get, people interact and they show up with our deeper dives. And early on, I forget how far into it we were, but at one point we did listener questions.
Yes.
And so we want to do listener questions again.
Definitely want to do that again for sure. That was so fun.
So fun. So we're going to put a link in the show notes to a form you can fill out if you want to submit a question, or if you want to share something about your private practice journey over the last 5 years, like taking you from before the pandemic to now. Like we would love to get those stories. We'll even make it possible for you to leave a recording. So we would love to just showcase you, our listeners, because we have fun, just the two of us, but it's so much more fun because of all of you. And we really deeply mean that, because that's just what makes it so fun. So we feel like we're talking with you, not at you.
Exactly. I feel like just this experience of being IBCLC, being practice owners, is so unique, and it bonds us so much. And I feel like every time we sit down, I know that there's a whole bunch of other people that are experiencing so much of what we're experiencing. And it just feels like we're getting this chance to like talk about all these wonderful things, but also all the hard things. And we know we're bonded by this kind of like unique field and way of doing business, and this passion that we obviously all have, because we're willing to kind of drudge through the yucky mud stuff that we don't always love, to be able to support families in the way that we do. And I think it's always feels like I know people out there listening, even though you and I are just having this conversation. I feel like you can just feel the energy of like, we're talking about this stuff because we're all kind of feeling this stuff. Like I can always feel that. And then when we get that feedback from people, and we so appreciate all of you who leave us reviews or send us DMs and messages and say and tag us on social media, like this was so helpful, or this was just like what I needed to hear today, or whatever it is, we love that, because it just reminds us that like why we're out here doing this, and that passion that we have to keep this conversation going and keep the, community that we're building through the deeper dives. It's so fun to think back. We started those deeper dives. I remember going into 2020, we had done a lot of fun stuff. Like we did some conferences. I remember I got to come up there and see you and get to drive to New Jersey. Oh my gosh, we drove. Like this Texas girl. I cannot even tell you. First time I was ever in a taxi, got in a taxi for the first time from the airport to see Annie. And then she tours me around New York. And then we get to drive to New Jersey, which was a whole experience of itself.
Well, what was so funny, too, do you remember that, first of all, when you were waiting for the taxi, you met somebody who knew me? Like, it was so random.
Yes,
do you remember that?
Yes. Oh,
so
my
random.
Gosh.
Like,
and in all of, highly populated New York, that I would run into the one person who also
so
knows
crazy.
You. Crazy.
It was really crazy. And then you came here and then we took the ferry. Remember, we walked the width of Manhattan.
Which was insane.
Insane. I've never done that since. I haven't done that.
I guess I need to come back.
We took like a slow walk and we had lunch and we went and like saw the sights and looked at stuff. And it was so much fun. And then we got in a car and drove to New Jersey for this in-person event that we did about running a group practice. And that was like our first outing as speakers. And we're like, we are going to do this. We want to be speakers. And we went to the USLCA conference, remember? Yes. And we had all the swag. We had the stickers and we were like, had media kits. And we were walking the exhibitor hall. Like, do you want to sponsor our podcast? And we did have some companies who did sponsor. There's still, you'll see that some past episodes, we still have those sponsorships up. We're really grateful for the support that those companies gave us. And then we were like, this probably isn't sustainable, because I think it was my husband who told me, he's like, really the big money in sponsorships would come if you guys were drinking while you talked about that stuff. And then you could get an alcohol sponsor. And then we would really, so we
somebody who has a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Brought to you by Casamigos Tequila, if you're listening.
I know. So we decided we had to go a different direction. And I remember like this whole vibe in the end of 2019. It was all like, like 2020, because it's such a big year. It's like everybody's going to do big things in 2020. And we're like, us too. We're going to do big things in 2020. And so we started our deeper dives in 2020, January of 2020. Because although we love talking to each other here, we were like, we want the community. We want to pull the people in and hear what they have to say and bring cool people on and let them, share wisdom and questions and knowledge and conversation. And so we started in 2020. Little did we know, just 2 months later, how the world would change. But I will say those deeper dives were such a lifeline, that we kept doing them. And we were also trapped, but we had these moments where we could come in to the deeper dive community and just like, we were talking about hard things and getting through this pandemic. And I just remember that being kind of like a real highlight of each month, because it was like such a hard time for everybody. And
it was good that we had it already going, because it was there. Like, we had dates on the calendar. Yeah. Like we blocked out all of 2020 in December of 2019. We're like, okay, it's going to be on this day in January and this day, all the way through December. Like, we had the dates and they were on our calendars already. And I think if they hadn't been there, I don't think we would have done the deeper dives. I think we just would have dissolved into a morass of whatever that was, whatever it all was. So they were, for us, at the very least, they were a lifeline, just something.
It's like an anchor to like keep looking forward to and anchor us into this mission that we had to like build this community. We weren't going to let the pandemic stop us there, right? And we already had a community that we were building in this online space, which, hey, little did we know. Because I think going into it, we were like, people want in-person stuff. Will they even enjoy being online things? And boy, little did we know, we all got a lesson on how to enjoy online things and tap into that instead of trying to be in person, which was so awesome, because I think we got to be right in the thick of that and learning how to make that space what it is today, which like that's one of the things I'm so proud of is our deeper dive spaces, because not only very selfishly do I gain so much out of those deeper dives, I feel like I will forever want to just have them for my own personal use, because we brought on so many amazing speakers, or not speakers, but like experts that have taught us so much, have opened our eyes. Oh my gosh, I've just like had so many aha moments and like eye-opening and vulnerable. I mean, it's just been so wonderful for my growth as a lactation consultant, but also like as a person in general. And even through the pandemic, like I think we had so many people that helped support us through that such stressful time. It was really good. I love our deeper dives. I'm so glad we were bold move 2020, changing everything, and, and it worked. We're so glad you're listening to our podcast, but we'd also love to have you join the conversation. Each month, we host a new deeper dive with a special guest for a live 1-hour conversation on different private practice topics. And with our affordable membership, you get access to our archive going back to January 2020. The magic happens when you show up.
And it was also in the time that we've been doing these deeper dives, I really can't think of a time where we ask somebody to do a deeper dive and they said no. Everybody that we've asked has said yes. And just looking back at the people that have said yes to us, it's like, you said yes to us? Like,
yeah.
And
it feels like
then
such
they
an
come
honor.
in and like, I'm like, I really would consider myself a subject matter expert in like a very limited number of things, where I'm like, I'm happy to say, like, I do feel like I know a lot about the things, these things that I do know a lot about. But I'm like, it's not enough. Like, and there's a ton of things that happen in private practice that I am not an expert in and don't want to be an expert in. Like when we did, I'm thinking like the one we did earlier this year with Nikki Greenaway about the new mastitis protocol. That was one where Leah and I were like, write that down, take a note.
I take notes like almost every deeper dive. That one was so good. Other one that I was like, just so many aha moments with Kathy Watson Jenna. That one was so good.
We did 2 with her and they were both like,
oh, and just like so many people we've met, including her, like just bringing this really energy that just keeps you going. Like, I want to keep doing this job, because it is like there's so many times where I feel so discouraged. Like, I don't know everything. I don't know enough. I need to keep, we always need to keep learning, but it always feels like it's never enough, right? And then just talking to these people that can just bring so much humility and this awareness that like we'll forever be growing and learning, and just being able to like take each of these deeper dives and just know that like, hey, this is another opportunity for me to learn something new, to see a different perspective, and like totally taking 1,000 notes. Like I literally have next to my desk here in my closet, no less. You guys know I'm in a closet still in a closet. I have a notepad that's like my deeper dive notes, because I every single time am taking notes. So even if nobody ever shows up for a deeper dive, Amy, you and I are going to continue to pay people to come and talk to us and help me be a better lactation consultant in person.
And we tell all of our speakers that. They're like, okay, what do we have to do to prepare? We're like, nothing. Just show up. We will ask the questions. We tell everybody, we're like, we'll have the people who are attending ask questions. Like we'll keep saying, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. But don't worry. If they don't, we have plenty of questions. You just have to just answer them. And we give them our questions in advance. But always people start asking questions. And they're great questions. And they're things that like we wouldn't have thought of. And so like with the deeper dives, it's not just these subject matter experts, but it's also the people that show up and participate. And even if they're just posting in the chat, you don't even have to come on camera if you want to be involved. Like we make it so easy. That's what makes them so great. And if you've come to a deeper dive, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, give it a try. They're really fun. And if you are also a subject matter expert on something that we haven't talked about in the deeper dives, like let us know. Like I would love to do a deeper dive into like thyroid stuff. Like I think that would be like amazing. So
good.
Just putting that out there into the universe.
Hint, hint. We've had so many people that have like fallen into our lap because we had a thought like, oh, we want to do something about this, and just things start to click together. And next thing we know, we have like this amazing speaker lined up, and we're just like, what? This is so awesome. Like anything, I feel like all the hormone interplay, and I've tried to learn so much about that, but it's so complex. I really feel like having some expert that could just like, can you break this down and let me ask questions? Because that's the thing. It's like you take these online courses and stuff like that, and then you don't really get to sit there and like, okay, I get this part, but I can't quite put these pieces together. Can you help me with that? And that's the beauty of the deeper dives. It's not just somebody kind of like, I'm going to talk about this, and then you're going to see my slides, and I'll send you a handout, and then that's the end. It's like, no, we get to hear a little bit, but then we get to say, okay, but wait. Like my brain got this part, but not that part. Tell me more, or I have this specific situation, because I feel like that's always the hard thing. It's like some specific situation or something like that we really get to dive into on the deeper dive. But I'm so like proud. I think Annie and I could go on and on, but I think we're both like proud of this baby that we've created together, and how like fate, the universe, whatever, just threw us together in a like just unbelievable way, how we just came together here, and then how we've just let this evolve. I think it's been such a natural evolution. It has never felt super pushed or strained, like, oh, we got to make this happen. It just feels like it always comes together. And I am just so appreciative of that, right? Because we do this on top of running our businesses and everything. So all that to say, I mean, I think this is just meant to be, Annie. We are just meant to be.
So, and we've been really like flexible with ourselves in terms of like, what are we trying to do? Like we started out, we were doing 2 a month. And during the pandemic, we were running those bonus interviews. But those are still great to go back and listen to.
So many good ones there.
So many good ones. And then we added the deeper dives. And then at a certain point, both of us were like, this is a lot. And not because we don't want to do it, but just it's a lot. And we, have kids and we have our businesses, and just life gets complicated. And we're like, we're going to do 1 a month, and the deeper dive, that feels like a good size. And we've had so many ideas, and we've been so like, we did that consulting session with the podcast company. They gave us like, they're like, we're testing out our podcast coaching services. Do you want free coaching? We're like, and it was like, it was a lot. We had to do all this homework in advance. Then we were on a Zoom with him for like 4 hours, and he gave us all these ideas, and we had spreadsheets and like Google slides about, and then we did, I don't think we did any of it. We're like, you know what? I just really like the deeper dives. I don't need to make it do all this other stuff, like, because I'm like, it's not like we're not trying to scale, because like we just want you guys, like that's really it.
Like just like y'all, we don't need a million billion people. We just need you who are here listening right now. That's all we need, to know that you're out there, and hopefully you're listening because this has served you in some way, which just warms our hearts and like reminds us of like why we came together in the beginning was because we know that when you're in these niche roles, support is where it's at, and you need this like more individualized support that really addresses the concerns that are so unique to what we do. And I just gotta say, Annie, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I might almost cry here. Thank you for taking a chance on me, for seeing my crazy attempt at making a video and scripting it out and everything, and like thinking, hey, I like this person. I want to do a project with her, because that just means so much. And you've been such a joy to work with and brought so much to my life. And I can't thank you enough. And can't wait till you're back in Texas, or I'm back in New York. So I can give you a big
I'm gonna
hug.
Cry. Oh, I know. It's
for these
like
5 years.
To go from like, I didn't know you at all, to like friends. Leah lives in the same city as my mother-in-law. We go visit her a lot, and we always make time to see Leah. And I've gotten like, we've shown each other, seen each other's homes and met each other's families. And it's like just the friends that you make when you do these kinds of projects together. And I hope that you all have those people that you've met as you've gone on your lactation consultant journey, where you can feel like, you're my people. I would not have met you if it wasn't for this work. And now I can't like imagine life without you. So thank you for everything you've brought to me. And thanks to all of you for listening and coming to the deeper dives. we have some great deeper dives scheduled coming up. This month in November, we have a deeper dive into screening for PMADS with Desiree Israel, who's a social worker and a certified breastfeeding specialist and all around amazing person. That's happening at the end of this month, November. And then next month, we're bringing in Maggie Patterson, who is a business coach. She focuses primarily on working with service-based businesses. So like agencies, but also like she totally understands what we do. And she's going to talk to us about pricing and how to communicate our pricing. And then in January, we're going to have Joy McTavish, who's an IBCLC, and she's going to do a deeper dive into values to start our year. And this is something that she posted about it. And we've worked with Joy before. We love her. She's great. Her. And she said something about like values workshops. I was like, yeah, sign us up for a deeper dive. And she was, so I'm really happy that that's finally happening. And so that'll kick off 2024. And we're expecting to then fill out the rest of that year too. We have no plans to stop any of this.
If it's you who has an expertise in something, we want to hear about it. Let us know. And thank you all so much for being on this wild ride with Annie and I. And we can't wait to keep you here and keep going. So to next time, Annie, thank you. And here's to 5 years together.
Here's to the next 5 together.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend and leave us a review. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.